Welcome to the Animal Training Academy podcast show. I'm your host, Ryan Carledge, and I'm passionate about helping you master your animal training skills using the most positive and least intrusive approaches. Here at ATA, we understand that navigating the vast challenges you encounter in training requires a comprehensive base of knowledge and experience. It's common to face obstacles and rough patches on your journey that can leave you feeling overwhelmed and stressed. Therefore, since 2015, we've been on a mission to empower animal training geeks worldwide. We've aided thousands in developing their skills, expanding their knowledge, boosting their confidence, and maximizing their positive impact on all the animal and human learners they work with. We are excited to do the same for you. Simply visit www.atamember.com, join our vibrant community, and geek out with us. And of course, in the meantime, enjoy this free podcast episode as we explore new ways to help you supercharge your training skills, grow your knowledge, and build your confidence, so that you can craft a life that positively impacts every learner you encounter. We will start today's episode where I'm thrilled to welcome back to the ATA podcast for part 2 of our conversation, the awesome Debbie Martin. Now, if you haven't listened to the first part of our conversation, you can find it as the previous episode on whatever app you're listening to this show on. In that episode, we explored Debbie's journey in getting started with positive reinforcement animal training, all the way up to what she's doing now in 2024. It's definitely worth a listen. However, if you haven't listened to it yet, you are, of course, welcome just to stay here with us for part 2. We will still gain plenty of insights to help you grow your skills, knowledge, and confidence in animal training. So let's dive in. Our guest, Debbie Martin, is a licensed veterinary technician in Texas, USA, and one of only 30 veterinary technician specialists in behaviour. She's also a Karen Pryor Academy certified training partner and faculty emeritus. Debbie has been a full-time registered and licensed veterinary technician since 1996, and she spent 14 years in private practice. Since 2005, she has been the animal behaviour technician for Veterinary Behaviour Consultations LLC. She owns Team Education and Animal Behaviour and Debbie Martin Animal Behaviour and Coaching. Additionally, Debbie is a contributing author and co-editor of the textbook Canine and Feline Behaviour for Veterinary Technicians and Nurses, 2nd edition. Alongside Dr. Martin, she co-authored Puppy Start Right Foundation Training for the Companion Dog. Her extensive experience in both general practice and behaviour speciality fuels her passion for a team approach to behaviour, preventative behaviour medicine, and the Fair Free Initiative. And she's honoured to be a subject matter expert for Fair Free and Fair Free Happy Homes. Debbie, thank you so much for coming back to hang out with us again on the Animal Training Academy podcast show.
Ryan, it's great to be here. Always good to have a conversation with you.
I'm looking forward to this one because, Debbie, in many parts of the world, if not all, animal training is a pretty unregulated industry. This means anyone can call themselves a trainer. This leads to a lot of unknowledgeable and unskilled individuals offering advice that can both be bad and, in some situations, dangerous. And unfortunately, this can often result in the end users, the animals, suffering, which is pretty upsetting and it simply is not right. You've been in the field for nearly 3 decades now, and you've had an incredible career, as we talked about in part 1. You've done so much in your career, we couldn't even fit it into a single episode. I had so many questions at the end. And as we mentioned in part 1, you've undoubtedly seen both the good and the bad throughout this time. And this makes you the perfect person to share with the listeners of this show how they can be as effective as possible with the resources they have in spreading the message about positive reinforcement focused training. And listeners, I'm thrilled to share that Debbie's put together some thoughts on this. 5 ways that we as a community can ensure that our message reaches as many people as possible in an accessible way. Debbie, can we get started on these 5 ideas with idea number 1?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to preface this is just my opinion. And I was hoping you guys would come up with what are the 5 ways that we can actually make this happen? Because I don't know that I actually have them. But when I think about bringing a community together and trying to spread a message and have people be open to that information, these are just some things that came to mind. So the first one was really about collaborating. So collaborating with fellow trainers that have somewhat of the same mindset, but not necessarily, right? I think that it gets tricky if we're not careful. But I think a reminder that regardless of how we train, it's all on a spectrum, and we all love animals. And so that love of animals is a thing that we think that we are helping, even if some of the information we have may be faulty, is just a reminder to have empathy for other people that are still along their journey, and a reminder that the techniques that maybe I choose not to use can still be effective in changing behavior. Otherwise, they wouldn't continue to be utilized. And so, do I realistically think that we will have a world where the only way that animals are trained is with positive reinforcement? I don't believe that is actually possible. I mean, I remember hearing Ken Ramirez talk about how, he gave this presentation. He was overseas somewhere, and some of the trainers came to him afterwards and said, you're asking us to be kinder to the animals than our bosses are to us, right? So, and that's true. If we aren't applying these same concepts with all species, are we really positive reinforcement trainers? And then it's a whole balloon. We could totally get off topic on that. But step 1 with collaboration. So working together, like what you're doing with ATA, you're bringing lots of professionals together and letting them have a voice. You're like, I'm here on your podcast talking about the things that I'm doing and what I'm passionate about. And so that collaboration helps spread that message. It gets that information to other people. Instead of it just being a local area that we can have an effect. And certainly because of the internet, I mean, this is amazing, right? Ryan, it's early morning for you in New Zealand while we're recording this. And for me, it's, early evening, the day before you in Texas. And so the fact that we have this cool tool where we can network and collaborate together instead of trying to do everything ourselves, I think that that's important. So finding ways to collaborate with each other. And I'll give just an example. We have the Puppy Start Right for Instructors course that's available through Karen Prayer Academy, and that launched in 2012. Well, it's about teaching group puppy socialization classes. So guess what happened in 2020 when the pandemic hit and no group classes were happening? Nobody was able to teach puppy classes. But there were still puppies in this world, and a lot of people were getting puppies actually because now they had the time to have them. And a friend and also colleague, Rose Brown, who's in St. John's, Newfoundland, she was teaching group classes, and she developed a online program to teach the Puppy Start Right course, the Puppy Start Right preschool, online, so she could continue helping pet owners with their young puppies and providing them the skills and the resources that they needed. And she also learned, hey, gosh, they were actually getting a lot more out of this without having to pay attention to their puppy and take care of their puppy in this group setting that was really so distracting for them, that the information and coaching them through Zoom online sessions as a group. They could learn from each other, but they could also really take in a lot more information. And so she has now developed it into more of a hybrid class where a lot of the learning still happens online. So she can reach people that aren't even local to her. But then she has optional drop-in classes for these puppies so they can be coached through some of the experiences like the handling and stuff. So because of that, I knew she was doing this. I even attended with my dog Chip, who is a border terrier. He was a puppy that I got in 2021 and attended her online Puppy Start Right preschool class. And so I encouraged her. I said, like, we should put this out there for other people to have access to. So we did create a supplement to the Puppy Start Right for Instructors course, the original course, that people who have taken that can also take this online program that provides them with a curriculum that is blended, that allows them to teach online if they want to, and also teach in person. So bringing her in to do that instead of, it wasn't something I was specializing in at the time. So why would I write it? You know, she was the expert in it. So let's have Rose write it and have her bring this program to other people. And we did.
Well, we should get Rose on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. You should have Rose on the podcast. I think you already have that in the works from what I hear.
Well, what a coincidence. Collaborating, and you talked about, and something we talked about in part one was how you'd gain insights from people that live in this world that we live in, and that is that not the one where everyone in the world is going to use positive reinforcement. I liked your perspective on that. It was refreshing, I think, because it's true and it's helpful to live in.
To remember that, like, yeah, we're not all going to have the same opinions about everything. You know, like if there's one perspective, there's got to be an opposite perspective. Everyone sees things differently. And I remember Karen Pryor telling me, maybe it was a room full of people actually, but I felt like she told me, but that you provide that information to people who want it. If they are not ready for it, you shoving it down their throat isn't going to make them more ready for it. And so there has to be this two-way conversation for information to be shared. And so, you know, really collaborating with each other, I think, is the first step. Recognizing others that are doing things, and I guess that's the second step. Now I'm getting into actually my second step, which is promoting what others are doing. You know, and you're doing that as well with this podcast, just having different experts in the field on and talking about what they're doing, even if it is in direct competition with you. I mean, certainly, I think we all have had a little bit of this, like, you know, because I have the Puppy Start Right book. I've seen other puppy books and I'm like, who are they to be writing a book? Oh, wait, you know, like, okay, I'm judging. Like, I'm sure they have great information too. Like, who was I to write the book years ago? Like, I was fairly new on my journey, but there's always that feeling of, I think earlier in your career, you have this feeling of, I've got it. I know a lot. And then as I get older, I keep feeling like there's so much more to learn. Which is a good thing. Like, it used to be, just tell me what I need to know because I need to have all the right answers. And now I'm like, I'll never have all the right answers, and we're always going to keep learning, and that's exciting. So, yeah. So step 2 of getting that information out to the masses about positive reinforcement is promoting what others are doing. And instead of just self-promotion, really trying to let other people know about awesome things you've read or seen, or even just on social media, sharing something that maybe you don't have all the information, but it looks pretty good. You know, like sometimes you can get burned on that, but as long as you have an idea of the person and their methodology, like, share it, promote it. Even, like I said, even if it's a little bit in competition with what you're doing, because we can't be everything to everyone. And that's important to realize as well, is that a client that finds me, I may or may not be a good fit for them. And it might be another person in the area or even remotely that would be a better fit for that person that they connect with or feel more comfortable with or have better communication with. So just realizing that that is going to happen. And so we can promote each other. And I love this. We have a group here in Austin called Every Dog. It's a nonprofit organization, and their focus is on making sure that training is affordable and accessible to everyone. And they give out a lot of scholarships to pet owners through every year through donations and through money that comes in through people taking their classes and stuff. But they have lots of scholarships that they give out. They even give money to people to go see a veterinary behaviorist if there's a behavior issue that needs to be addressed. And they have become the place to go to find out where you need to go, right? They want to be that resource in this area. Like, hey, if I want to work on service dog training, who should I contact? And so the Miranda Workman, who is with the company, she has a list of people that she trusts that she can send people to, regardless, like different areas of town, whatever specialty they're looking for. So I love that she is doing that and really trying to promote all the positive reinforcement groups and businesses in our area. And then she also does free webinars that are available online all the time, like several a month, that are accessible to anyone, and it mainly geared towards pet owners. I just did one for them on noise sensitivities in dogs, and so it was actually pretty popular because in our part of the world right now it's summer and there's lots of thunderstorms, and that tends to be an issue. And we have fireworks coming up for July 4th. So promoting what others are doing was another idea I had. What do you think, Ryan? Like the first two, do those hit well with you, collaborating and then promoting with others?
Yeah, well, I have a question that your first two have made me think about. Might take us down a side road. Let's see where we go. But one reason I love this podcast show is I get to talk to you, and I get to talk to Ken, and I get to talk to Michelle Pulio, and I get to talk to all of our other guests and people that have been in the game for decades. The game being animal training and behavior related stuff. And thinking about the podcast and promoting others and sharing other stories, which I love doing. I love learning about other people's stories. And then you said there that maybe you can just share something on social media, but maybe you will get burned. And thinking about community and thinking about collaboration. And recently we had a subject matter expert, stay with me, Debbie, and listeners. Recently we had a subject matter expert join us in Animal Training Academy, and they were a subject matter expert on messaging, on how we can use messaging on our websites specifically to attract the right clients. And we're talking about talking to your pet owners and what kind of language you would use. And people brought up, but that language would sound silly to people in our industry. And, you've got to be aware. And so it was important for people when they're wording things to go, well, this might not speak to my clients, but it's going to make me look more respectable among my peers. And there's these really powerful social reinforcers, I think, which shape our behavior. And when we start to think about collaboration, and I'm not brave enough to bring someone on here that's potentially got different perspectives, because I am worried about my social reinforcers and being punished for that. How do we navigate this space and evolve in this space and become that collaborative individual?
And I'm not saying that you go and say hey, let's invite, well, I'm not going to name any names. Celebrity
I don't know who
that
you're thinking.
Yeah.
Who could she be talking
Everyone
about?
knows, right?
Who
National
is Stevie talking?
Geographic.
I still don't know.
I'm not suggesting that we open our arms to anyone and bring them in, because I feel like sometimes that just opens the door for them to promote more of what they're doing, which may not be what we want to promote. But I think that thoughtful consideration of maybe this person does it slightly different than me, but it still falls within the category of positive reinforcement. Does that make sense? Yeah. So my suggestion isn't to collaborate with someone who's on like far end of the spectrum. It's really just to collaborate with our group of people. Because what I see is competition, so much competition between people that are on the same team, so to speak. Like we're preaching the same things, maybe slightly differently, different terminology or whatever, but we're still using the same methodology for the most part. And even then, there can be some undermining of others' knowledge and perspectives. And I think that does injustice to the whole positive reinforcement field, because we're not promoting each other necessarily enough. Like a lot of people do a great job of it, but then naturally, like there is some competition. And it's hard finding that balance of being comfortable with promoting others and still having a business that is successful, especially if it's people local to you. Right. So I don't have all the answers, that's for sure. But I do feel like collaboration, like if I look at a lot of the projects that I have done, they have been collaborative and I learned stuff like the fear-free courses that have been written that I either helped manage or helped write. We had multiple people writing on those modules. It wasn't just one person's perspective for the most part. And so you've got different, you learn different nuggets of information, and you bring that collaboration in. That's one thing I have really learned from Fear Free, because they have like a whole advisory group, and they are trying to get the internal medicine specialists and the cardiologist and client service representatives, like practice managers. They all have important information to help with creating fear-free content across the profession, whether it be in boarding and pet sitting or grooming or animal training or in the veterinary field. There are a variety of different professionals there that we can collaborate with and promote things together. Yeah. And so Fear Free is one that I did a lot of work with. I had also mentioned bringing Rose Brown in to write an additional supplement to the Puppy Start Right for Instructors course. And then like the textbook that I'm on, like we have authors for chapters. It's not all written by me. It's edited by two people, myself and Julie Shaw. And so we review stuff, but we find authors to write sections, and sometimes we write sections as well. So there's a collaborative effort, and it, I think, makes things better if we collaborate, because we can learn new ways of saying things and also bring in slightly different perspectives that are still in line with our methodology.
And also am thinking right now, it's just going to come to me that these two things are so vital and close to the heart of what we do at Animal Training Academy. And what we do at Animal Training Academy is community, and collaborating and promoting others and community is so important as a professional in this industry, because it's hard and it's an emotional job. Some of the things you'll see out there, and having that community to lean on is so crucial. I'm totally going down some random tangents here, so appreciate everyone staying with me. But what I've now got in 2024 personally, just speaking for myself, Debbie, and listeners, from collaborating with, this is episode 230 or something, and promoting, and we allow people in our members only group to promote their services and to promote their webinars and to send people to their content. But the cool thing now, though, is that I'm currently studying with Jennifer Shryock and the family pause and learning and getting accredited there. And then finally, after years, going to get tag teach certified. And then I'm going to do Leslie's thing because I've been doing all of our things for years. And I'm like, I better get certified in all these things. But like, there is always a thing, a topic in the community that someone knows about. And so now, like, there's very few problems that come across my desk where I'm like, the perfect person for you is blah, blah, blah. And we actually have a spreadsheet at ATA with like all of these amazing people. So community, and that comes from those two things, I think, you've just shared. What does that all make you think?
Yeah, definitely. Community. That would be another great term that we could have used for the collaboration or in promoting of others, is kind of lump that under community. I think it's just another way of putting a different word on it, which is maybe more of what I was going for even. But also then, so like number 3 I have on my list of made up Debbie list is emphasizing compassion and inclusion, and really trying to open doors for those new to the scene. I think it's, I think one of the biggest disservices we can do is for someone who is excited about positive reinforcement, but then doesn't yet have all the knowledge or no, they could have knowledge, but maybe they haven't had as much experience, right? And so for us to mistakenly dismiss that in some way and forgetting where we came from originally, like it's all part of the journey and the learning experience, and it will continue. And what I was doing even 5 years ago is not what I'm doing now, so it's constantly evolving and changing, and really remembering that for those new people onto the scene, wanting to get be acknowledged and be seen as well, so that compassion, empathy for like it's not only with the clients that we have, but also with people in our field.
You said it earlier on that there was a point in your career that I think everyone can relate to in some way. I can, where you learned about the tools and techniques that one uses when they might label themselves a positive reinforcement animal trainer or whatever label you choose to place upon yourself. And you're like, yeah, I got this. I got this. And then you realize, because some client comes along or some learner comes along, you're like, oh shit, I don't got this. and so these, would I be right in saying, Debbie, right's not the right word, but what do you think about me saying that gaining the experience to understand the value of collaborating with fellow trainers, or gaining the experience of seeing the benefits of promoting what others are doing, and developing compassion and inclusion, there's a big difference between listening to this podcast and going, okay, cool, I've got to be more compassionate and more inclusive, and gaining that same conclusion through experience. So I'm guessing that that's been your experience, that you've seen the reinforcers from what you're labeling as compassion and inclusion. Have you got any stories there that kind of where that's really sunk in for you, or the opposite? Mm-hmm. The opposite has punished you.
Yeah, I will say, being on Clicker Expo faculty is a huge honor, but also can be extremely early on, and still is in a good way challenging, right? Because that, what I've learned is that it's good to challenge your thoughts, like to always question them and your beliefs. Like, well, is that really true? Where did I learn that? Why do we always say that? And Susan Friedman is a big one on this, but really questioning, like, why do we phrase it that way? Or one of the big things that I've gotten away from is, calling a dog an aggressive dog or a cat an aggressive cat. I will no longer do that. I will say something, a dog who has displayed aggression when being handled at the veterinary hospital, because the dog itself is not aggressive. Like, to the pet owner, especially, like 99.9% of the time, this dog is a big love bug for them, probably. There's just this one circumstance when he's at the veterinarian that things don't go so well. And so he gets labeled as an aggressive dog. And so really putting it more into context so that we're, or even when we say fearful. So I've gotten away from saying, it's a fearful cat. And I'll say it's a cat that displays fear in XYZ context. It's not always afraid. Well, sometimes they are actually. Like there are actually animals that are almost always afraid, like some global fear issues. Those we might be able to call them that if we have identified what we're talking about. But yeah, so I think that's one of them. Hopefully that kind of hits to the point. And then I would say also my fear was, and this can come from my upbringing where I didn't want to be wrong about something. And so that perfectionist attitude, like I need to know the right answers so that I'm not mistaken. But I've started to learn that the right answer in 2010 might not be the same answer in 2024. And that's okay, right? That's actually probably good. That some things will stand the test of time, but others will evolve or change slightly. And we'll find new technologies to use and methods that are still in line with our methodology. So to get to that point, like basically, like the evolution of wanting to be right and then learning that it's okay if things change and we can give ourselves grace and give ourselves some self-compassion for rewording things. Because I look at, some of the writing that I did years ago, I'm like, oh my gosh, like really? And in 10 years from now, I'll probably say the same thing about stuff I've written now. Like it's an evolution in process. But your thoughts on what I've shared?
Well, it makes me think that for you, the listener, if you're considering your compassion, then giving yourself grace and being like, I am exhibiting behaviors I might label as compassionate in this context. And we have to ourselves learn as we evolve in our professional roles to develop and to be kind to ourselves and to shape ourselves and to celebrate ourselves as we develop more and more behaviors that we might label as compassion. And so these points in emphasizing compassion and inclusion are individual to the listener of this show in terms of what that means for them.
Yeah. Well, and I'll add, like, one of the hard things for me was feeling like being under a microscope, like I was going to say something wrong, but I actually and maybe this just comes with experience and being there longer. Now I look forward to that. Like I actually look forward to finding different ways to phrase things or say things. And, but at the same time, also recognizing that it is not always possible to say things in a way that will please everyone. Not purposely offending someone, but it can be challenging to be what's the word I want to be inclusive to the point that you can't get your information across because it's not coming across naturally. It's probably what I'm doing right now, right? Like I'm trying to be really thoughtful about my words, and it's making it hard for me to come up with exactly what I want to say, because I don't want to offend someone just accidentally, right? And so that can create communication issues too. So I think that one thing that I've tried to find is acceptance that we're all going to communicate slightly differently, but as long as our intention is authentic and kind, that that's the thing to remember. I mean, we all have different histories and learning histories, and even like because of the internet and the global kind of commerce that we have now, what is acceptable in one part of the country or the world may sound very off-putting in another part. So it is quite a challenge to communicate in a way that is compassionate for everyone sometimes.
I think your part there about assuming that the intention is good and kind is something that I struggle with sometimes, but I have to remind myself, like, when you feel yourself get offended, think the intention behind what's being said here is good. For whatever reason it's delivering, your personal learning history are struggling with that in whatever way. But to remember that, to assume good intent, that's, I think, really powerful. Hey, we're up to number 3. So we have,
Okay.
everyone, just to bring us back, we're talking about 5 ways from Debbie. These are Debbie's ways, as she pointed out. As a community, we can ensure that our message reaches as many people as possible and in an accessible way. And Debbie shared with us 3 ideas so far. The first one was about collaborating with fellow trainers and the value in that. Second one was about promoting what others are doing. And we talked about doing that even if they might be perceived as competition, and navigating that kind of space and thought process. The third one was emphasizing compassion and inclusion. Can you take us through the last 2, please, Debbie?
Yeah. So the next one was number 4 is avoiding comparison and judgment. This one's a work in progress for me. Whenever I see someone doing something kind of like new, I'm like, oh, I could do that, right? Like, or why are they doing that and I'm not doing that? I should be doing that. Like it's really finding what we enjoy and are good at and kind of latching on to that. Like I shared in the first episode, I have basically like 4 different job descriptions, but it's that diversity that helps kind of bring everything in that I like to do without it being just one thing. So for me, that works. But it can easily make it be like we're comparing or judging ourselves. One thing that I saw at Clicker Expo that I thought was amazing was when they do the backstage pass and they're doing live training. So if you've not been to Clicker Expo or seen Backstage Pass, what this is usually they have like 4 of the faculty up there, and each faculty member will work with an audience member's dog for like 15 to 20 minutes. Sometimes they'll do more than one session. I mean, they talk just about what they're doing, why they're setting things up, and what their kind of goal is. And then they discuss their decision making while they're doing it, some of them and some of them after. And oh my gosh, when I watched this, I was just like, well, if I had been up there, I would have been like, well, so-and-so did it this way. Maybe I should do it that way. I probably wouldn't have changed my whole training plan. But then what was so cool to see is they all are amazing trainers and came about the whole process and the whole setup completely differently. But it was all amazing. It still worked really well. And the animals had a good time. They worked with what they had. They adjusted things. You got to see what they were thinking. And it wasn't like one of them was right or wrong. They were all right. It was just a different way of doing things. And I thought that was just fantastic. But it reminded me of, if I had been on that stage and I was going to be the last one to go, I would have this tendency to want to like take all these things that I saw them doing and change my plan and maybe go against what would be natural for me to do. So that's the comparison and judgment part that can be a negative side to it. if we're not careful. It can go the other way too. We can be too judgy, right? Like someone misspeaks or something. I'm sure I've done it several times during our recordings, and holding on to, well, they said this one time and it wasn't quite how I would have said it, so you're going to write that person off forever. Or they posted something in the image on social media wasn't appropriate, or you felt it wasn't appropriate. And instead of having a conversation with the person and getting their perspective, we just kind of write them off as, they don't know what they're talking about. And so avoiding that as much as possible. And if we feel those feelings, if it's a person that we feel we can approach and have a safe conversation with, I think that is better. And sometimes those conversations are really hard to do. But I listen to a lot of Brene Brown, and when you're vulnerable, appropriately vulnerable, sometimes those discussions will just bring you closer with those people and can also be such a great learning experience for you as a person, and also the relationship that you build with that person. Yeah. So avoiding that comparison and judgment. And then the last one is learning from each other, because there are so many different ways to learn. I struggle with this too, and I hear other reinforcement trainers say this too. And in fact, I see it in comments at conferences. Like, I didn't really it's stuff I'd already heard before. It wasn't anything new. And it's like, well, it probably was said slightly differently. It may be the same concept, but I think we can always learn something new if it's just a different way of saying it, that might help connect with a client that you're working with. Always kind of having that ability to take information from other people and learn from them is part of us helping spread that message of positive reinforcement.
Avoiding comparison and judgment and learning from each other. I have a question that might add number 6 to this list.
Good. Yes. Let's make it a 10. I'm sure other people I was like, oh, why when you asked me, what am I passionate about? Well, I'm passionate about us coming together as a group and working together. So yeah, community, whether you're in the veterinary field, the animal trainer field, the pet sitter, groomer, whatever, we're working with pets and animals, and we can collaborate with each other to make sure that the life of those pets is continue, there's continuity between the care that they get in different areas of their lives. And so that collaboration is really important as well.
So this number 6 acknowledges the fact that one, you work in the veterinary field, and veterinarians and veterinary technicians and veterinary staff, we all know, are under a lot of pressure and under a lot of stress, and mental health is a challenging component for some individuals in that space. You'll be doing this for nearly 3 decades. So, I say congratulations in part 1, but part of that congratulations is you've navigated all of that, and you're still here with this big smile on your face, helping animals, which is awesome. Secondly, to avoid comparison, to avoid judgment, to learn from each other, I think if you're, and these are not well thought out thoughts, and again, like Debbie said, they're just the opinions of an individual. That individual happens to be me right now. If you're there saying, oh, I didn't really learn anything new from that person, there's this space there that I think can be challenging to enter, that is required for you to be open to learning stuff from new people. And that space is space of empathy and a space of compassion. And that comes from looking after yourself and re-energizing yourself, so that you can step back into your role as a caring professional and have empathy and be open to learning and be open to avoiding comparison and judgment and practicing compassion and inclusion. So the 6th thing that I wanted to add here, and I'm interested to get your thoughts on, considering your longevity in this profession, and that you're coming here today sharing all of these great insights, is what you have to share with the listeners about how they can get themselves in a space where their mind, their mental state is open to all of these things. Because I think that requires awareness and intentional action.
Yeah. And it is hard. I don't want to imply, I've been in the field a long time. It doesn't mean that it's all been enjoyable, right? So I've struggled with compassion fatigue and there have been times I've been like, oh, I should just leave the field and do something else. It would just be so much easier, right? So even though I have had a almost 3-decade-long career in animal behavior and in veterinary medicine as well, those thoughts have been on my mind at times. They come and go. And I will say that in the past couple years, I actually have gotten much better about time management, as well as saying no to things or postponing things as needed for my own mental health, and also finding outlets that aren't just hobbies, that are actually things that can produce more mindfulness and calm in my life. So a big one of that for me has been introducing yoga and also meditation practice every day. And that is different than what I used to do to blow off steam. So I used to do more adrenaline type things like dirt bike riding, motorcycle riding, where I couldn't think about work during that time because I was focused on not dying. And that was the way that I would get away from work, which is not the healthy way to do it. I'm looking back now and realizing, yeah, that was fun. And I didn't think about work, and there was a stress release, but it also wasn't sustainable or something that I could do when I have a 5-minute break, And so I needed to find a way to open up that mental space for myself more frequently, that didn't involve having to wait until the weekend or another time when there was a big block of time to be able to disconnect. And so hopefully I'm answering the question. I'm getting there. Yes, it's setting that foundation of having a way that you can be open. And that is what I have found for me, is finding where I can find my recuperation, re-energizing. And that is through things like yoga and meditation. And that's not for everyone. I mean, everyone has to find what works for them. But if you had told me 5 years ago that I would be meditating every day, I would have been like, doing what? I don't think so. But if you haven't tried it, not that I'm suggesting everyone should do it. It's not for everyone, but actually, there's a lot of science behind it. So it's quite amazing for me. Yeah, but that has allowed me to have some of that more mindset of avoiding comparison and judgment, and being comfortable with uncomfortable feelings that come up, and being more open to what people have to say, looking for, and I found this through the Karen Pryor program, was looking for the good, instead of always just trying to find where's the mistake, right? I think that a lot of us grow up, thinking of finding the error as opposed to recognizing all the good things and commenting on those. And so that has helped me find that balance in my life.
Well, I think that was a beautiful way to wrap up those now six.
Six
Six
and I'm
ways.
sure people in the audience, please, yes, we want to hear from you. I'm sure there are others we could keep adding to this list.
Well, I think
to help get
6
that message out
was actually 7, 8, 9, because you said bit of time management, you said saying no more, you said postponing things. So there was a lot packed into there. Debbie, thank you so much for sharing everything over the last 2 episodes. This does sadly now bring us to the final question. With all of the experience and knowledge and projects that you've gained over your career, I'm really curious to see, and everything you've shared in this episode, to hear, what you would really like to see happen in our animal care, animal welfare, animal training industry over the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh, yeah. So I would really like to see trainers and veterinary professionals starting to work a little closer together. And this is a really hard balance because the trainer is they're kind of the authority figure on the training part. The veterinarian's an authority figure as well. And so the two personalities coming together and collaborating cannot always feel like it's going to mix very well. It's more like oil and water as opposed to being able to mix well. And so I would really like to see that happen, because I think that for pet owners, that collaboration can be very influential, especially if there is an issue that is potentially a behavioral concern as well as a medical one.
Awesome. Well, I think that is happening more and more now, and we're definitely sense that I'm seeing it discussed more and recommended more in our with our clients, with our members, with our Animal Training Academy community. Well, thanks again so much, Debbie. Do you want to just quickly maybe share with everyone listening where they can go to find out more about you and maybe get in touch if they are so inclined?
Yeah, so I've got a whole bunch of free webinars on the teamanimalbehavior.com website. So it's teamanimalbehavior.com. You can also find out more about Debbie Martin Animal Behavior and Coaching on that same page. There's a link to that there as well. And yeah, that's probably the best way to contact me, is through that website.
Well, awesome. Well, we will link to everything we've talked about in the show notes as well. Debbie, this has been so much fun. So from myself and on behalf of everyone listening, thank you so much. And we really appreciate your time and hanging out with us at Animal Training Academy. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Ryan.
And thank you so much for listening as well. This is your host, Ryan Cartledge, signing off from this episode of the Animal Training Academy podcast show. We hope today's conversation inspired you and equipped you with new tools for your trainer's toolbox. Remember, every challenge in training is an opportunity to learn and sharpen your animal training geekery. Embrace the rough patches, learn from them, and keep improving. And don't forget, the path to growing your skills and expanding your knowledge continues beyond this episode. Visit www.atamember.com to join our supportive membership, where you will find a community of trainers just like you. Together, we're making a huge positive difference in the lives of animal and human learners worldwide. Until next time, keep honing your skills, stay awesome, and remember, every interaction with an animal or human learner is your opportunity to create ripples. We're here cheering you on every step of the way. See you at the next episode.